Hey, Foot Clan, we want to thank today's sponsor, PristineAuction.com. Pristine Auction is the place to go for all sorts of sports memorabilia, autographed, unique items specific to your team and perfect for your man cave, your woman cave, your office, whatever you want. It's your way to get something unique and great on the web. And what's so cool is they don't just have weekly auctions. They have daily auctions, hundreds of auctions that end every night. Mike is addicted to going on there, and we have to.
I do have a problem.
We have to hide the company.
A great problem.
The company card away from him. So check him out, PristineAuction.com.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Oh, welcome into Foot Clan headquarters, the studio.
This is the good stuff this episode.
This one?
Good. Oh, yeah.
This episode's got the good stuff.
Oh,
The
yeah.
good stuff.
These are the quarterbacks that we care about far more than those first 10 scrubs.
Yeah.
Speaking of the scrubs, you can listen to us talk about them on the Tuesday show. Look, we're getting into our, 11 through 20 at the quarterback position today. Andy, Mike, and Jason, the Fantasy Footballers, back again, delivering the goodness. It's going to be a fun show today. We ended with a couple of interesting names on the last show, and so I'm excited to get into it. Check us out on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com. That's where you can submit questions. We're going to answer a bunch of listener questions. Next, on the next episode, we also have a mailbag show every single week, an extra show on jointhefoot.com. And so I invite you to go and check that out. It's awesome. You can also find us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. And this week, we are taking a minute to just enlist the help of the Foot Clan.
Foot Clan.
Is
it Unite or?
It never works.
I didn't know you were going there. Try it again.
Foot Clan.
Unite!
Yeah, I mean, it's just an oversell, guys.
Nope.
All right. Well, we're missing it here. You can go to podcastawards.com, nominate this show in the sports category and the People's Choice category for an award. We're almost to 200 shows. Do you realize that?
I do.
200 shows.
I believe the 200th episode coming up is going to be right about on my birthday.
Yeah. Happy birthday to you.
You got any special treats for me on my birthday?
I am working
Give us
on
the
one.
gift of taking that day off.
Yeah.
I mean,
not half.
your
we
gift.
would love your gift. Yeah, 200 shows. That's just pretty incredible, and we wouldn't be able to do that without your support. So thank you so much for supporting this show and for helping us at podcastawards.com. The quick question for the day, before we get into the quarterbacks and some great discussion about streaming the position, the quarterback position, I have a quick question. You guys don't know what it is, but I'll give you a hint. It's a good one.
Oh, all right. I think I know the answer.
Sweet hint.
Do you guys know who had the longest rush from scrimmage in 2015?
Yeah.
All right, so
longest-
don't answer then.
the longest-
if you know the answer.
The longest rush.
What was
from
the longest
scrimmage?
rush from scrimmage in 2015? It was,
I
in
have-
fact,
I
a
have
touchdown.
I have a very strong guess. I'm going to go with a Marcus Mariota.
That was who I was going with. Were we
Jason
correct?
Witten. No, not really. It was.
I just want to see that
I know.
so bad.
I was picturing
I
it.
wanna
It was
see
fun.
Jason
The play
Witten.
lasted 25 seconds.
No, it wasn't Jason Witten, believe it or not. It was Marcus Mariota. And so he's one of the quarterbacks we're going to talk about today. A lot has been happening with the Titans in general this offseason. Rashard Matthews, DeMarco Murray, Mike Mularkey becoming the head coach.
Getting a bajillion picks.
The big trade. There's some talk about them grabbing a wide receiver at pick 15. Another weapon for Mariota. So I think he is going to be – I wanted to remind people about the capability of somebody who didn't rush a lot but does have elite four – what did he run? A four something?
What was it? I'll look it up.
Check out Mariota's 40 time. Just the ability to make a play like that. We saw that with RG3 in the past where somehow a play that looks like it's a 5 or 10 yard run can become an 87-yard touchdown. That was the play from scrimmage that was the longest last year.
That's no guarantee of success. You know who has the number 1 quarterback run in history? Because that was the number 2 longest quarterback run.
Terrell Pryor?
Terrell Pryor. So
Well, I tell you what, you hand him the ball, he might do something.
yeah.
Okay, so what was his 40 time, by the way?
I needed to vet it by a different source here, so I'm pulling it up. It was 4.52.
Okay,
Pretty
that sounds
good for a
right.
quarterback.
That sounds right. Any news you guys want to get into? Or are we saving that till next week?
Let's get right to the quarterbacks.
I think we're going to get into the quarterbacks. Obviously, we've got. I want to let everybody know too. We have a couple of great draft shows coming up. We're going to have a special guest on Tuesday of next week. Are we revealing that?
Yeah, I think we can. For those who do not know RotoViz, you're ridiculous. First of all, go check out rotoviz.com. And Matthew Friedman, also known as Matt F. the Oracle, has agreed in principle to join us for a nice.
Well, we didn't secure the deal.
Well, you always got to have a way out.
Do we need to send a box of cookies or something? Got to lock it down.
Your wife makes great lemon cookies, so let's bring those up here, and then we'll continue the show.
You wish.
Yeah, I do wish.
You'll be asleep in 8 minutes.
No, I'm excited to talk about the quarterbacks. But before we talk about the quarterbacks, we do want to thank one of our best sponsors, SeatGeek. The SeatGeek app is the place to buy tickets. This isn't something we just talked about all last year. It's something we use ourselves.
Yeah, they're great.
We're going to the FSTA conference. When is that? In June?
In New York?
In New York. We're going to go to the Mets game. Got our tickets on SeatGeek. If you've ever been frustrated buying your tickets online, most sites make it complicated. They put in all those extra charges. That is why you need SeatGeek. They basically have all the tickets from all the different ticketing sites. They pool them all in one location. And you know the maps that you have on all those other ticketing sites that stink?
Yeah,
you can't
terrible.
find your seats? This one's great, like color coordinated. Here's your best deal, super easy, and unlike other sites, they don't charge you nonsense fees at the end that are asinine. So here's what you do: you can also get a $20 cash back by using our promo code. Download the free SeatGeek app; it's completely free. Do that now, and then go on the settings tab and add the promo code Footballers. And then SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. So download the free SeatGeek app today. Enter promo code Footballers to save $20.
Quarterbacks.
Yes.
All right, we're getting into 11 through 20 at the quarterback position. Some of the highlights we brought up last show. And so if you want an introduction to what streaming the quarterback position means, go listen to the show from Tuesday. We talked about the fact that there were 11 quarterbacks last year that threw for 30 or more touchdowns. The fact that there were 40, is that right? 40,
that is correct.
Different quarterbacks that put up a QB1 week last year.
Which means top 12.
Which means top 12 at the position at least in 1 week, which is just incredible. And so we're going to start right now at number 11 on our consensus list. You can see all of our quarterbacks, 1 through, 32, I'm guessing, somewhere right around there.
Right around there, yeah.
On the website, thefantasyfootballers.com, just click the rankings tab. You can see it in every scoring system. Our consensus that we're going through on the show is by 6-point per passing touchdown scoring system. So there's some variation there. Obviously, running quarterbacks move up a little bit in a 4-point league because the value of the rush is higher than the passing touchdown. So number 11, I think a lot of people would have expected him in our top 10 or I think he's probably in the top 10 of a lot of people.
Yep.
And that's Ben Roethlisberger.
He's the 6th quarterback right now going off the board.
Okay, so that's
in average draft. So we've got him devalued here as far as being overdrafted. And what's crazy is he's on pace, for 5,000 yards type of season. And I had mentioned this last episode, that I really, really like Ben Roethlisberger. I think it's a guarantee he's going to have 4,500 yards passing, 29 touchdowns. The thing that we don't remember a lot of times with Big Ben, he doesn't throw that many touchdowns by comparison to the other giant name quarterbacks in fantasy, at least over the course of his career.
21 last year?
Yes.
21 touchdowns in 2015?
And the highest total that Ben Roethlisberger has ever thrown for, the highest. We're talking in the age where Tom Brady has thrown a 50-touchdown season. Big Ben, fantasy superstar, 32. 32 touchdowns is the highest total for a full season for Ben Roethlisberger.
That's the only – he's done that twice, but those are the only seasons above 30 in what will now be, a 12-year career. And so there's a word of caution with all the hype that comes around Big Ben. He has had some of those – mind-blowing games in the public eye where he had back-to-back 7 touchdown, six touchdown games. What was it, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And so that kind of gets in your mind. Antonio Brown obviously provides so much upside for a quarterback, and so there are games where he goes out, like last year at Seattle, and throws for 456 yards. But he also has a game like, week 3 against St. Louis where he threw for 192.
Well, he also died in that
That's
game.
true. That game he did. But he had a 229 game, a 220 game. And so there's some variables with Big Ben.
We've talked about the impact that Martavis Bryant's suspension has on Antonio Brown, those kinds of guys. It goes up. It brings Ben down. I mean, that's
7 points less per game is the average without Martavis Bryant last year.
And that's a big deal. I mean, you're talking a full touchdown less for Big Ben for the entire team. So it's unless someone like Sammie Coates or Markus Wheaton can step up and fill a void left behind by the immense talent of Bryant. I mean, sure, Roethlisberger's going to dazzle you with his yards, but he's going to, like Eli Manning. We talked about Eli Manning can have these monster games and then just disappear for fantasy. Ben can do the same type of a thing.
Yeah, he can beat you when you expect him to stink, and he can stink for you when you're playing him. Let me ask this, though. If he's 11 on our list, is he on any of our teams in any league? Because, I mean, it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen.
It's highly doubtful.
It would pretty much be impossible for us, the three of us, to draft him because, I said this last episode, there are a lot of really great NFL quarterbacks who are not always the best quarterbacks for fantasy football. Ben Roethlisberger is a great example. He's a guy that I would want on my NFL team to get me to a Super Bowl and win a championship, but I'm not going to have him on my fantasy team as far as for the value of where other people take him because of his name.
Not to mention he misses games here and there with injuries. Yes. Jason, how much does Lev Bell returning help Big Ben in the fantasy world, or does it?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. To have a safety valve where you can get extra yards. You look at the year before where he had Le'Veon Bell healthy, and his yards were through the roof. Also, Le'Veon Bell can catch a few passes through.
Just a few.
Get a
like
few
80,
touchdowns.
Right?
Well, I was going to say the touchdowns through the passing game can help. But losing, you say, so he gets Le'Veon Bell back. That's great. But as Mike mentioned, you lose Martavis Bryant, who's another elite talent. He's more important to Big Ben than Le'Veon Bell is to Big Ben.
Yeah, a lot of big play potential with Martavis that you lose if Coates can't become, at least a percentage of what he offered, or somebody else.
Green, yeah, sure.
So let's move on to number 12 on the consensus rankings. I think our first of several surprises today to me. He's certainly not there because of me.
Yeah,
he
fair.
Is 16 on my rankings, though, so not too bad. Mike has him 10, Jason has him 14, and his name is Jameis Winston. I will say this. If you project Jameis Winston's yardage numbers off of the second half of the year, which I think is very fair to do.
Because
for a rookie who is learning the system, who is really being given more of the reins over the course of a year. It's not just improvement on total efficiency. It's also volume. He was on pace for, I think, 4,400 yards. And so I've also heard very good things. I know there's various coach speak out there. We tell you to be careful of it in the offseason. But from a weight standpoint, you really can't coach speed somebody's weight.
Yeah, he's getting his cardio on.
Yeah, he's down. I think he played as high as
250.
250 last year. I think I heard he's down to 215, 225.
Wow,
maybe 225-ish.
Yeah,
I'll vet that number, but it's a good sign.
Yeah, he's on that Eddie Lacy, Tony Horton program over there, doing work with the cardio. And look, I love Jameis Winston for fantasy this year.
Okay, he's at 236. He played above 250 last year.
Well, that's still a big deal. Jameis Winston, youngest rookie to throw for over 4,000 yards.
Wow.
So you're talking something that's never been done. Now, granted, he had a pretty low passing percentage, under 60, which is not what you want to see with a 58.3. And you could see that when you watch him, especially the first half of the year, especially game one.
Oh, my goodness.
Jameis he thought he was ready. He wasn't ready for the NFL. And the game, you could see it start slowing down, and he acclimates more to the game. And he's not, especially coming out with Marcus Mariota, he's not, you think, okay, he's not the rushing quarterback. He's not going to run. But he got over 200 yards on the ground and 6 touchdowns.
Those type of numbers really make a difference for.
You
take a look at the difference between him and Big Ben. Now, I don't expect him to get 6 touchdowns again next year on the ground.
That's fair.
But the 200 yards, that's a huge difference between him and Big Ben, who gets pretty much 0 every year. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing how few yards Big Ben gets at all. But Mariota, you mentioned with
Winston. You mean Winston?
Yeah, you mentioned with Winston that he was the youngest quarterback in the history of the NFL to throw for 4,000 yards. He was the youngest quarterback in the history of the NFL to throw for 3,000. Even if you go take it down to just getting 3,000, we don't realize how young he is.
22 years old right now, so he's 21 last year. And in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues, he jumps from 16 to 11. He gets into my top 10 because of what he does offer you.
To 11?
Yeah.
But he's not in your top 10 then.
I'm sorry, into my top. I meant as a number one. Sorry, I meant a number one.
I thought my brain was exploding.
Yeah, 11 is in the first 10 numbers. 1,150. But he climbs up is my point because he does. I think I put him down for 4 rushing touchdowns this year. Like Jason said, 6 is kind of a pretty high number. Obviously, if he gave you that, I mean, just more power to him as a quarterback, a fantasy quarterback. But I gave him 4, and I think, you've got the weapons there. We've talked kind of ad nauseum about the fact Dirk Cutter is there and is stable, and Doug Martin's still there, and Mike Evans in his ascension. I think they probably draft a wide receiver. That's my personal opinion. We'll find out here soon. The weapons
Jackson
are there.
Back. Austin, yeah, I mean, it's really going to help. And one other thing you need to keep in mind with Jameis Winston. So I've got him in my own personal rankings, 1 spot behind Ryan Fitzpatrick. I statted Fitzpatrick as if he's been re-signed with the Jets.
Which he is.
But
in my head.
In your head. But the truth is that Jameis Winston has crazy upside. His ceiling is much higher than Ryan Fitzpatrick's ceiling in my world, because if he comes out and lights, and throws for 4,400, 4,500 yards, I wouldn't be like, whoa. I'm never seeing Fitzpatrick coming out and throwing for 4,500 yards.
Because you've never seen him throw for 4,000 like Jameis Winston did in his rookie year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So your upside at his range is nice.
Yeah, I really like both the sophomores this year. We're going to talk about Mariota a little bit later. At number 13, we're going to talk about Derek Carr coming into year number 3.
Yes.
Somebody who really had some impressive games last year, had some games that kind of, didn't do much for you.
It fell apart there towards the end of the year.
But he did throw for almost 4,000 yards, 30-plus touchdowns, so he's one of those 11 guys that did that. And an interesting fact here is that his sophomore season was very comparable to Andrew Luck's, except for Carr had an even better year than Luck did as a sophomore. We talked about Luck on the last show and how in year 3 he went out and threw for 40 touchdowns.
So you heard it here from Andy. 40 touchdowns for Derek Carr.
Not quite yet, but what are your guys' thoughts on Derek Carr, the offense? Amari Cooper's obviously a huge weapon. Crabtree proved to be a reliable weapon last year. I don't know what you guys think about Latavius and Walford and some of those other guys, but Derek Carr, number 13, puts him right outside that top 12 QB1 range. Where do you guys have Carr in your mind?
All of these guys at this range are so close in our points. In fact, he's actually tied for 13th in our consensus ranking with 2 other guys. But when you're at this level of ranking, very similar to what I just talked about with Winston, what you're looking for this late in rankings is upside. I'm not worried about risk when I take a guy late or, at the back half of quarterbacks going. I'm looking for upside, and Derek Carr showed he can sling it. Last year, one of the things that doesn't show up very well on the box score is how bad Amari Cooper was hurt, physically hurt. I remember watching the games just thinking, like, why are they leaving him in there?
Yeah.
He couldn't run routes. It was literally like he was hobbling while running routes, and they kept him in the game. Now, it's hard as a quarterback to be efficient when one of your wide receivers can't get open because he's hurt. And you remember his terrible statistics, Amari Cooper's statistics that were so bad in those games. Well, Cooper's going to be healthy, and if he had kept the pace that happened before that injury, we're talking about Derek Carr even better last year than he had. And so he's got high upside to me. I think that it's really going to depend on what they do in the draft.
I've an interesting question about Carr. Maybe it's a differentiator for you guys in the draft or in the future. 1/4 of his games for the season are against the Denver defense and the Kansas City defense being in that division. That could be a point towards how good he played last year in spite of those matchups, but he still has to do it this year. So does that impact your view on him versus somebody like, in a different in a different division with different defenses?
You have to take divisions into account. You have to, because they play them twice a year. It'd be stupid not to. But is Kansas City's defense going to be better or worse as of right now?
I think it's still to be determined.
Okay. And Denver? Do you think they're going to be as good as they were last year?
Tough to be as good as last year.
When they've lost so many pieces.
But still a great passing defense, I think.
So I think both defenses are going to be good. But the point I'm bringing up is that they've lost – each defense has lost significant pieces. So coming into this year, it should possibly
Maybe don't
be,
overemphasize that, you're saying.
Right, exactly.
Breaking news.
Now, this probably won't be breaking news to anybody listening right now.
Because
if you don't know, we're recording this show a little early. Mike is on an anniversary trip.
That's right.
During this
10th
this
anniversary.
week. So we recorded the quarterback shows before he left town because we wanted to keep him involved. We had to let him.
Well,
you
the
know.
people demanded.
Sure, that's what we told him. But the breaking news is this that just came through here is that Percy Harvin has said he is retiring.
Oh,
Really?
I was about to be blown away. When you said Percy Harvin, I thought you were going to say he signed somewhere, and I was going to be shocked.
That, man,
Kind of sad.
that disappoints me personally. I was a really, really big Percy Harvin fan. I was, what?
No,
Andy,
that guy was a huge Percy Harvin.
Well, he was a
we were-
Minnesota fan, so I mean,
and we were together in the
Percival brothers.
knowing the fantasy power of Percy Harvin in Minnesota. So
Yeah.
that's unfortunate.
well, and you know, he had unique skills that almost nobody else in the game had.
To pay the bills.
Yeah, well, not for long though. So, anyways,
Moving on.
farewell, Percy. It's sad that I don't get to see you sign and disappoint another team
So,
this year.
but Derek Carr to me is one of the perfect guys. If you're gonna wait late, and maybe you're gonna hold two guys, you hold Derek Carr and somebody else, and you can play those two matchups. You get Derek Carr because you know that his early schedule is great, and you know you can ditch him once the division games are coming up.
All right, this next guy is part of a group of people basically tied in our consensus rankings, but certainly not tied when you look at them individually. Jason has him at 7. I have him at 25.
That is shocking to me.
That I have him that low?
You're that low on him.
Where do you have him,
I'll
Mike?
explain that. And Mike has him at 13 right now. And this is Andy Dalton.
Yeah, so Andy Dalton, I guess I have the floor, huh? Andy Dalton is, to me...
I think I have the floor. You have the ceiling.
So
Well done.
What happened last year, he was on pace to be one of the top 4 quarterbacks last year. We have a track record from 2 years prior where he finished the year as the number 3 quarterback. So you're talking about a guy who can do it. He slings the ball, and when they get down near the end zone, there's some quarterbacks that don't have that repertoire of passing skills in the red zone, and there are some that do, and Andy Dalton does have it.
And weapons to do it.
And weapons. Now, the downside is he's lost Marvin Jones as a weapon, and he's lost Mohamed Sanu. So I'm not super hot on Andy Dalton, but he is a guy that I think that we're forgetting about a little bit. I think as the draft gets closer, because of losing Sanu and because of losing Marvin Jones, his draft stock's going to fall, and he's still a guy with one of the best wide receivers in the league, one of the best tight end targets, who's done it on multiple years. So I just think, who around him would I say, oh, I've got to have someone else other than Andy Dalton? And
Well, the one that jumps out to me is obviously you're on the Andy Dalton train as opposed to the Big Ben train. You have Dalton much higher than Big Ben in your rankings. To me, I can make a lot of the arguments you made against Big Ben against Andy Dalton. He said 1 year of more than 30 touchdowns, 1 year of more than 4,000 yards passing.
it's interceptions.
Huh?
Interceptions to me is I'm looking at my rankings, and the difference between Big Ben and Andy Dalton is interceptions. Last year, you saw Andy Dalton protect the ball very well, and so I think that's one of the things that's separating him in my rankings. In addition to that, and we brought this up a minute ago about Big Ben, is the fact that Big Ben does not run the ball. Andy Dalton always gets a couple of touchdowns on the ground, and he'll get you, 200 yards.
Yeah, and it's a confidence. The differentiator for our rankings is a confidence level. Do I believe that Andy Dalton, from the beginning half of last year, is what you're going to see this year? Hugh Jackson is not the offensive coordinator of that team anymore.
But their quarterback coach
and
is who got promoted to the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I understand. But you do have a change in potentially the philosophy of the running game. Who are they going to give the ball to? Is it going to be more Jimmy Hill? They lost 2 wide receivers. Is Eifert going to be that potent in the red zone, or is it going to be the running game? I love A.J. Green. I like Andy Dalton just fine. But again, 1 year of more than 30 touchdowns in his career out of 5 seasons, that's enough for me to say I'm not going to move him up into that upper echelon. Doesn't mean he can't finish there, but that's the disparity that I see. And obviously it's a big one between those two guys. I fall on the side of, hey, I've had enough Andy Dalton.
Okay, that's fair.
Marcus Mariota at 15 in our consensus rankings. We talked about him earlier, had the longest play from scrimmage for a touchdown last year, rush from scrimmage last year. He's somebody who...
Andy's boy.
Yeah, how high do I have him?
You have
7,
him at
right?
7. And
We have this really unique thing in our rankings that obviously we did not try to do, but I have Andy Dalton at 7, where Mike has him at 13 and Andy at 25. At 7, Mike has Phillip Rivers, where Andy's got him at 17 and 11, and at 7, Andy has Marcus Mariota, where the two of us don't have him nearly as high at 16 and 22. So for some reason, lucky
it's like
number
a casino
sevens.
thing. It's are you spinning sevens? These are this is all of our risk position for some reason. That's very high for Mariota. I think I told you both. I doubt he stays at 7. However, I do see him as a QB1. I think that you saw over the second half of the season, over the entirety of the season, a very accurate quarterback who had very few weapons. Now you add DeMarco Murray, 2 new offensive linemen. You add Terry Robisky as the offensive coordinator, somebody who I think who is more creative.
But you lost Ken Wisenhunt.
Again, another plus, another checkbox. We'll see what they do in the draft. I think they could draft another offensive weapon at the wide receiver position to go with Green Beckham and a returning Kendall Wright, a very reliable Delaney Walker, and a guy who can run the ball and he does not make a lot of mistakes. You talk about the difference between, I'd bet just about everything on him having about half the interceptions that Winston has next year, because Mariota takes care of the ball. He's very accurate. He didn't have a lot of weapons. Just from a statistical standpoint, that offense has to improve. I have a lot of confidence in Mariota being a weapon, and when a guy can run the ball a little bit, put up those yards, I like him.
Yeah, the problem
maybe it's
for me,
maybe it's a little too high.
No,
I'll be first to admit 7 sounds too high.
the problem with me for Mariota is I just don't see the scoring as far as touchdowns. I mean, he had 19 touchdowns in 12 games. That puts him on pace for about 1.5 a game, which he absolutely can improve. I'm not saying that. I just don't see a huge jump coming for there. I would be shocked if Mariota threw over 30 touchdowns. I think,
does he need to be a 1 though?
I think he does. I mean, because for as much as we think of him as a running quarterback, 12 games, 252 yards, 87 yards on one play. That's about a third of the production in one play, which that was also the second longest rush by a quarterback in history. Now, if he's going to continue to give me historical runs, I can jump on board with Mariota.
Rushing attempts went up in the second half when Malarkey took over.
Yeah, it is true. I think when you look at his game log and you go back and watch the film, I was actually a little bit surprised with Mariota. I did not think, just kind of feelings-wise at the end of last year, that he was very pass happy. He wasn't a quarterback that was going to put up yards in my mind. He was much more the Russell Wilson build. And as I went back and kind of investigated game by game and looked, he surprised me. We forget that on his last game, if you're just looking through the game log, he went out early in that game. So he was actually on pace. He was on pace for almost right on the dot, over 4,000 yards. If you take that injured game that he basically did not play in out of the equation. And I was surprised by that, to see that Mariota was on pace for 4,000 yards. But he's not as big a runner as
you know who he feels like to me? Now, he's a little bit better of an athlete. He feels like Alex Smith. He feels like that's what his career path is going to be.
It could be. That's not the worst.
Yeah, and it's not the worst. I think Alex Smith is a good quarterback.
No, but from a fantasy perspective, it wouldn't be good.
Right.
Yeah,
they remind me of
from
each
an
other.
accuracy perspective, can run better than people think.
Yeah,
doesn't really focus on the long ball at all.
Yeah.
Last year, I believe Mariota was the least accurate over 20 yards.
Yes, over 20 yards in the air, he was the least accurate passer in the league. premeditated. I just thought of that now, and then I'm gonna go with that. Marcus Smith.
Marcus Smith. I hope that's not the case. He certainly was more prolific in college, but Smith was in that level too. So
he's certainly the big argument for him is weapons. Last year he had nobody. Kendall Wright got injured, and it was basically Delaney Walker.
Yeah.
This year
that
he's
was
got
it.
so many more weapons, and that makes such a difference.
0
for
wide
quarterback.
receivers in the top 50 in fantasy.
That's
for
incredible.
for Tennessee.
That
doesn't help.
I would love to see one of these, like a Coleman, a Doxson. Personally, I wouldn't want them to be on there, but if you add a guy like that to a really potent guy to that offense, then that improves my opinion on him.
All right, so let's move on. Where are we at? 16?
Yep.
All right, 16 is Ryan Fitzpatrick. He had a career year last year. He gave 2 wide receivers the opportunity to be ones, essentially, with Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker having double-digit touchdown seasons. He threw 31 touchdowns, which, when you think of a career year, maybe you don't think 31 is a career year. but for Fitzpatrick, he does run the ball a little bit.
Yeah, he does.
He had a pretty low passer rating. He's kind of a gunslinger. Interceptions are an issue at times. Consistency is not what you get out of him. For him being ranked this high, he really falls into a streamer-only category for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's going to be a situational play, not a guy you draft. When you pick your guy at the draft, you're picking a guy, if you're using our strategy and you're picking late, you're picking a guy that you hope can blow up and be an every single week starter. That's why a guy like a Jameis Winston, there's reason to believe if he took a step forward, he could develop into that. Whereas Ryan Fitzpatrick, even last year, he finished as the 11th quarterback, which is, essentially about where I've got him ranked for this next year, assuming status quo. And so if he finishes 11th, that's not a guy you're going to play every week, even though he's a quarterback 1. That's a guy that you're going to have to pick the matchups and start when he's, on the road against a super easy team or at home in not winter for Fitzpatrick. Kind of did not do well.
For a lumberjack man, he really falls apart in the winter.
He wouldn't do well in the world of Game of Thrones.
Yeah. No. And he is tied again. We'll say this. Our rankings are so close in this group of guys. This is another 3-way tie for 16th. So him and the next 2 guys all tied for that slot.
Now at 17, we have Colin Kaepernick, which I think might be interesting for a lot of people. But, 17 is right in the middle of the pack. We have the entertaining pleasure right now of having this standoff between Mike and Jason and myself. We'll call you the north side of the desk.
Okay.
I'm on the south side. And the south side believes that Kaepernick is going to be a 49er, which, honestly, most of my ranking of Colin Kaepernick here has to do with his potential in a Chip Kelly offense to just have some big games, get opportunities to run the ball. That being said, news broke today that Chip Kelly apparently really likes Blaine Gabbert, and so we don't know that Kaepernick's a starter. But if he was in San Francisco, I think he can do some things. Sam Bradford certainly wasn't a pleasant surprise last year, but he did have some good games. So
it will be very interesting.
You guys believe he'll be traded to Denver, and that's the reason why we're having a standoff.
Well, yeah, but that's for fun. I've actually ranked him in the Kelly system as well. And I think it will be very interesting to finally see Chip Kelly with his style of quarterback. I mean, you think back of what Kelly has gotten done in Philadelphia. You had Sam Bradford, who is a statue. You have Nick Foles, maybe even more of a statue. I mean, he just Sanchez can kind of move, but he hasn't had his. It's
so
like,
would
I don't
you,
know if
would you
Kaepernick
say that
is
that's
his though.
Would you
I
say
think
that that's
it is.
his style though? I mean, if he's had the last several years of not really having a running quarterback, are you just saying it's his style because of his college play in Oregon?
Yes, I'm saying for college because he wanted to run his offense in the pros, and I just think I think Kaepernick will be a better fit for certain things that he wants to get done. I mean, you saw they were doing read option type stuff in Philadelphia, and Colin Kaepernick can get it done in that. Colin Kaepernick succeeds greatly.
He just
in
has to be
formations like
he
the
has
pistol.
to be accurate because he's a career 59% guy,
And I
so
think
he has
the
to jump up to that 65% range to be good in
I
Kelly's
think that
system.
running really helps improve his accuracy because guys will be more open.
It's interesting you guys are talking all about this Chip Kelly system because I believe I will stat him up from where I have him now if he gets traded to Denver. Because the weapons that you have to throw the ball to in San Francisco, sure, he might run the ball or run more plays because of Chip Kelly's system, but I would much rather have a guy that's throwing to Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders than throwing to Torrey Smith and
Garrett Selleck.
Yeah, so,
Sean Drone.
Smelter.
Okay, well, that is the
Hyde,
debate with
come on.
Kaepernick. I think it's kind of even though he's 17, he's kind of don't touch for me right now. Just wait and see what's going on. He's probably a streaming guy.
Yes.
But he's interesting with the Kelly or the Denver situation. At 18, you have Tony Romo, somebody who I think is probably out of this next group is one of my favorite values because he could get hurt again. I mean, that's the real truth. He could get hurt again, so he's going to drop down.
He could.
But when he plays and he has Dez Bryant,
he's great.
He's really good.
I have Tony Romo at 12. He is my last quarterback one. I think that he's a sneaky grab this year because of his injuries last year. He's shown in fantasy that he can put up great numbers with Dez Bryant. I believe Tony Romo is a guy that I'm going to be targeting in a lot of my drafts because if I left my draft with Tony Romo, I'm happy. I think I've got a quarterback that can, if I did a good job in the rest of my draft, I can go and win a championship barring injury.
So last year obviously was collarbone squared. That's what we'll call the season. He broke the collarbone a couple of times. But in 2014, last full season, he led the league in completion percentage, almost 70%. Yards per attempt, passer rating, and QBR.
Okay,
but he didn't have a high volume of touchdowns because that was the DeMarco Murray's year.
Right. I think we need to repeat this. He led the league in YPA, so he's bombing the ball out the yard, and completion percentage. That's ridiculous to lead the league in both of those numbers. And Dez Bryant is a huge part of that. He had 21 touchdowns. This is 2014. 21 touchdowns in the red zone. Romo is just I love Tony Romo personally, and that does hurt my heart a little bit because I don't want to root for the Cowboys. But I think Romo is a great quarterback, and I was shocked when I saw he's at 18 for me right now. And that's just where he happened to get statted out, but I'm with Jason. I love Romo for fantasy purposes. I would not mind taking him with my third to last pick if he happened to be available, and that's my only quarterback going into the season. I'd be perfectly fine with that.
What is the we talk a lot about our draft kit coming up, and we've got that risk ranking. What is your risk evaluation of Tony Romo since he's broken his collarbone 3 times, but now allegedly has done something to enforce it to stop it from breaking again?
The way that Tony Romo plays is as much to do with his injury risk as simply his collarbone. He is somebody who makes plays in the pocket, holds the ball a little bit longer.
It's like kind of Warner-esque, just
Sure.
willing to take that hit.
And so I've got to put that risk level, if 10's a high risk and 1's a low risk, I'm going to put it at 6-7 for Tony Romo. But it's a 6-7 that I don't mind taking because it's so late in the draft.
Yeah, it doesn't cost you anything.
For me, it's actually lower. If you look back at his history, I mean, before this year, he only played 4 games, but in the previous 4 seasons, he only had missed 2 games.
And in every single one of those seasons, he was quarterback 1, fantasy-wise.
Yep, and that's the case for Tony Romo, and he's going to be down the list. Most leagues, if not all, you're going to have the Bortles flying off the board ahead of Tony Romo.
Tony Romo is being drafted as the 16th quarterback right now,
shade.
which is 10th round and after.
Is that just because we don't have the training camp buzz of him being maybe back from surgery and feeling healthy?
It's because it happens every single year.
That's why. You're right.
I don't get it. I don't get it why there's
Do they draft a quarterback?
I think
Dallas
the
gonna draft
Cowboys?
one?
they should.
I wouldn't. Personally, I would not.
Yeah, you're a big Brandon Wheaton guy.
I love Brandon Wheaton.
All right, number 19. Wait, he's not even there anymore, right? Okay.
He's not.
Number 19 is Captain.
Kellen Moore.
Yeah, you mean Max Hall? Number 19, Kirk Cousins, Captain Kirk.
Oh yeah.
The either hero or villain for your playoff run
Hero
last
or
year.
zero.
Yeah. So he was impressive. He had 5 touchdowns on the ground, which I think is pretty incredible, but he can move a little bit. He had 29 through the air, over 4,100 yards, and really a lot of people want to know, why is he this low? Is there any reason why Kirk Cousins can't be, in that top 12?
No, I think he could, but you're talking about Cousins really took off in the second half of the season. Really, for the majority, he was a 1 touchdown per game type of guy. Now, I think that's, like I was saying, I think the ability is there if you continue to have health with Jordan Reed. And if you can find another target, and you know who was unhealthy for a lot of last year? DeSean Jackson. DeSean Jackson is being a forgotten man in the world of fantasy football, which is ridiculous. He's not my favorite player, but the fact that there's so much shade being thrown on him right now is absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, I've been surprised with some of the value I've seen. DeSean Jackson going pretty late.
So you bring DeSean Jackson back. That raises the ceiling for Kirk Cousins. He can get it done. We're talked about the risk meter. It's I don't know if he's
led the league in completion percentage. The same type of argument we just made for Romo, except
but not YPA.
No, not YPA. Has Jordan Reed, obviously a big weapon.
Finished last year on a streak of very few interceptions. This is the type of guy where
it can kind of go any way with him, and that's why he's down at 19 and not higher.
Yeah, and the truth is that's a great risk. He's a great guy to grab at the end of a draft.
But do you think you can, though? Where's he going right now?
I will effort that. He is going 14th at quarterback, ninth round. So, if you're looking between Kirk Cousins and Eli Manning and Tony Romo, if you wanted to go Kirk Cousins and hope that the second half of the year what you saw was the real Kirk Cousins, I think that's a strategic move that you can make, and it could pay off huge for you. And I don't believe it is. I don't believe that he's the guy that barely threw interceptions and was on fire the second half of the year, because I saw a big disparity in home and away. I saw some mental mistakes that were just absurd.
Now, you have a division that, unlike Derek Carr going up against some of those prolific defenses, now the Giants, maybe they're better this year, but you're going against the Giants defense, the Eagles defense, softer,
and the Cowboys,
softer secondaries than other divisions. So that could be a point in his favor if those guys aren't, those teams aren't shored up in the secondary.
Yeah, talking to the interceptions, I just want to actually read them because it's strange. A guy in his first 6 games, 8 interceptions. After that, 3 the rest of the year.
It was impressive. He seems to need that confidence.
Did he turn the corner?
On a roll?
Yes, he does. He tilts. If you put Cousins on tilt, the game is done.
But that's also early quarterback experience. Like you said, did it click? Is this the year? All those questions are why he's worried.
And Washington's asking that as well.
Yep.
Without paying him.
Last year, Mike and I talking about, I've never seen a guy that you could put together a highlight film of a single game of Kirk Cousins, and you could say, this guy is all world. He's incredible. And the same game, you could put together a low light film where you go, get this guy off the field.
You know who that reminds me of, though?
Who?
Tony Romo.
Sure.
Tony Romo had these games where you'd watch drive after drive, and then he'd just unravel in the second half, or in certain drives it would be.
I think that was called playoffs.
Yeah. I think it was, Romo had that reputation until he put together consistency for a while.
I just want to remind everyone of the Kirk Cousins kneel out at the end of the half instead of spiking the ball.
No need to remind me.
Oh, that was
because that moment
I had that tattooed on my leg
that
afterwards.
Moment was great.
And Pierre Garçon putting his head down was great. All right, the last guy in our consensus top 20.
This is
Matthew Stafford. What are you appalled or excited?
I'm excited to talk about it because I don't think there is a single guy who is he's in your top 10. Andy.
He is in my top 10.
He is in our 20s.
Absolutely.
So we are both very off of Matt Stafford. You are still on. He's lost a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Sell me Matt Stafford.
It's going to be a hard sell.
Well, the sell is not going to be built around Marvin Jones replacing Calvin Johnson. It's not. What it's going to be built around is Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford in the second half of last year was incredible. I think you had 3 interceptions in the second half of last year, and I'm trying to pull up the numbers right now to give them to you. He had 3 interceptions. I think he was on pace for somewhere in the 40s. In terms of touchdowns. He really turned his entire season around, and I still just believe that the attempts aren't going to change. And if the attempts don't change for Matthew Stafford, he'll be efficient enough with them to make his mark in fantasy football. I believe in the second half of the year, his pace in the second half was 38 for 4,400 yards. And he only threw, I believe, 4 interceptions in the second half. A tale of two seasons. I know Matthew Stafford is a polarizing guy like a Jay Cutler in the past and those type of players. But I just, Matthew Stafford can turn it on any given day. He still's got Golden Tate, Eric Ebron in the red zone, Marvin Jones, a couple of passing. Riddick isn't running the ball. Riddick catches the ball, 70 to 80 catches. Amir Abdullah is a pass catcher. That's 5 names that I threw out there that can be good enough for this offense.
Yes.
And they might bring another guy on.
If you believe in what Andy is saying, the nice thing about Matthew Stafford, he is actually getting drafted about where we're talking about, the 20th. Right now.
He's free.
Yeah, he's free. He's essentially going undrafted, and Andy's got him finishing in the top 8 for him. So, I mean, when you get in this range
in
of
6 point,
when you get in this range of quarterbacks, you're really talking about a difference of opinion from one person to the next where you go, I like Matthew Stafford. I hate Matthew Stafford. I love Kirk Cousins. Oh, he's the worst. And you got to pick your –
yeah.
I mean, it's common with a lot of the players in this range. But the point again and again and again is that this range – I mean, we're at the 20th. If you're in a league that starts 12, there might not even be 20 rostered quarterbacks. I mean, usually you'd probably roster about 20 in a league. That's around the range. But we still haven't talked about Matt Ryan or Tyrod Taylor, Ryan Tannehill, Cutler. I mean, there's so many guys. Flacco. Andy's talked about Flacco before. I'm not super high on him, but I know Andy's talked about a big bounce-back year for the Ravens.
I have?
Yeah.
I've talked about a big bounce back year for the Ravens.
I don't remember this.
Me neither. Maybe it was
a dream, but I swear it's happened.
I think we've talked about the fact that the Ravens have high pass attempts.
Yes,
but that's not the same as me being in their camp.
I'm gonna agree to disagree on this one.
Okay.
So my argument to your argument is the loss of Calvin Johnson is so huge because I think that those other guys you mentioned, Calvin just being on the field makes that entire team better. Calvin makes things easier for everybody, where Marvin Jones will not do that. We've seen in the past Stafford, it's not a huge sample size, granted, but in the games where Calvin Johnson is not involved, you've seen Stafford just fall on his face. He's gotten better recently. I will admit to this point of Stafford has become a decent real-life quarterback, cut down on the interceptions. He's just playing better. But it's very difficult for me to get to the point of seeing him lose Calvin and him still finishing in the top 10.
And that's fine. I think that's fair. I don't think he's going to stay 8. 8's too high. He'll be at that 12, 13, QB1, QB2 range for me. There's no way I want to go week in and week out with Stafford as my quarterback, even though he ended so well. I'm looking at that saying, okay, I don't really want him in there every single week. So that puts him on the bubble a little bit more. So that does it for today's episode, the last half of our quarterbacks. Is there anybody from the remainder that we didn't talk about that you want to say anything about for the last, and you're talking about that Tyrod Taylor, Matt Ryan, Jay Cutler, Alex Smith.
I think Ryan Tannehill.
Joe Flacco, who Jason loves.
No.
RG3, Sam Bradford.
I could be wrong on the Joe Flacco. It wasn't a Joe Flacco conversation, but a Ravens bounce back candidate team. I could be wrong on that, but that was the reason I was bringing him up. The guy that I would bring up.
I do like the Ravens bouncing back as a team. Yeah.
Yeah. The guy that I would bring up is actually Ryan Tannehill because he burned a lot of people last year. The Ryan Tannehill hype train last year was pretty good. There was a lot of evidence for him to move forward, and in my opinion, I think he stunk for a lot of last year. He hurt a lot of fantasy players, so his value is going to be poof gone. It's just, he might not go drafted in many leagues, but you've got Gase coming in with a new system. Devontae Parker, who wasn't healthy and was barely used until the end of the year last year, is now added to that team. You could see there are some reasons that Tannehill could come back to fantasy relevance and be good as an undrafted guy.
All right. I agree with you on that. That's an interesting name, and it's just, again, a testament to the depth at the position when you have so many guys like Matt Ryan that weren't talked about, Ryan Tannehill.
It's
incredible to me.
the point I was going to make was that just the guys left on this list.
Matty Ice is a guy.
Tyrod Taylor,
Yeah.
Tannehill, Cutler, even Alex Smith in the right scenarios.
You streamed Smith a couple times last year.
Yeah, you know who I streamed in the playoffs? Brock Osweiler.
Yeah.
And it was the right choice for what I had available. So these are guys who are not even close to the top of our list. They have value.
And you know who we didn't name? Robert Griffin III.
No,
we didn't.
Robert Griffin.
Or any of the rookies, because obviously they haven't been drafted and put into position to maybe start on certain teams. Not that they'll climb into the top 10 by any means, but you never know. So next week we're going to have a draft preview. We're going to talk about some of the big offensive names, where they could land, where we think they'll land. We'll have special guests on the show. And again, if there's some huge piece of news that we didn't talk about, it's not. It's just because we couldn't see the future.
Because it wasn't important.
We couldn't. We couldn't see the future, and we had to record the show a little early for Mike to get out of town with his wife and enjoy a 10-year anniversary trip. And so, make sure you come back next week. Check out podcastawards.com. Vote for us, and stay tuned for the show after the show on YouTube. If you have a question, we didn't answer a lot of listener questions this week, so go ahead and. I don't think we got to any this week, so Go ahead and. Go on the website. We'll answer those next week for sure. Any parting words, gentlemen?
Well, we're about to answer a whole lot of listener questions right now on Patreon. It's Thursday.
Yeah,
That's
check
true.
out Join the Foot if you want mailbag.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Hey, goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com. And follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.
All right, what's the stats thing? Do we have one?
I don't think we
Come
have
on,
one.
guys. Yeah, it's on
that
you.
our job?
It's on you. Today
Okay.
it is. For this one.
For this one?
on.
All right. Show idea.
Is there a good Patreon question we should do?
Probably not.
No.
All right. Let me get these things off. What are things people debate?
Best arcade game?
Favorite holiday?
It's Christmas.
Yeah.
Best arcade game? Did you go to the arcade enough to do that one?
Yeah.
I never played arcade games.
Turtles in Time.
Turtles in Time, that's very good.
That was good.
Trying to think of a safe